Welcome back to New Rockstars. I'm Erik Voss.
And I'm Jessica Clemons.
And this is a breakdown of all the details and Easter eggs that you missed in Daredevil Born Again Episode 1 and Episode 2.
These first two episodes have finally brought Charlie Cox's Daredevil home in an undoubtedly shared universe of the MCU with Heartbreak and Bone Crunch. And after reacting to the episodes from the Shout Couch, it's over here, that's what I'm pointing at, we are now here to analyze these episodes scene by scene for the details you might have missed.
And shirts like this, Justice and Punishment Design and Jessica's Silver Surfer Design, are both available for purchase exclusively on our merch store, nerdriot.shop, which is the best way to support us here at New Rockstars. And we're so glad to be breaking down these first two episodes together since this Jerica journey began on the road to Born Again 2 years ago. And we broke down the first 3 seasons of Daredevil from the Netflix era, plus Defenders, in separate videos if you want to catch up. And for a more condensed recap, check out this video. Okay, so we open once again with the Marvel Television title card, the second time we're seeing this bumper after Agatha All Along, now that Marvel Studios wants their streaming series to feel less like 6-chapter movies and more like true episodic television. Among the flashing comic book imagery is the fist of the Iron Man armor model 22, aka the Thor Buster armor from 2003's Invincible Iron Man number 64.
We open on a shot of the Lexington Hotel in New York City, seen from the same rooftop where Wilson Fisk will meet Vanessa as he steps out from his victory party. We open on it with a kind of Shudder transition, which we'll see again reversed in a few minutes when Matt listens in on Foggy's phone call. And I think we can see all of these opening images as Matt opens his senses to the sounds of rhythms of the city, a sense of paranoia that something is, just off tonight.
And then from this, we cross-dissolve and pull back on the red and blue and green lights of traffic that also match the tacky out-of-season lights that adorably adorn Josie's bar on the corner of 10th Avenue and West 51st Street. Those cross streets place us firmly in the heart of Hell's Kitchen.
We see shots of Washington Square and then a red-tinted street that houses the law offices of Nelson, Murdock, and Page, the new name of the law firm that Matt, Foggy, and Karen wrote on a napkin at the final episode of Season 3 in 2018. Now their firm is firmly established with an actual sign. In his appearance as She-Hulk, Matt indicated that his firm was running.
I run my practice in Hell's Kitchen, and we mostly do pro bono work.
So regarding the timeline, the Netflix Marvel seasons all took place roughly around the time they came out. So Daredevil Season 3 would be after the events of Iron Fist in Season 2. So really sometime late 2017 or early 2018, but presumably must have taken place before the snap of Infinity War because, no one was running around in Season 3 being like, people are dust now. But we do know that Matt Murdock must have survived Thanos' snap because he appeared in a flashback in the Echo series fighting Maya Lopez, which must have taken place during the blip period. Matt showed up in Spider-Man No Way Home. His scene was set in fall 2024, and then in Christmas of 2024, Wilson Fisk resurfaced in the Hawkeye series. Matt's appearance in She-Hulk was set in the springtime of 2025, so I think this prologue sequence is set sometime late 2025 or early 2026.
Matt Murdock, Charlie Cox, Karen Page, Deborah Ann Wool, and Foggy Nelson, Eldon Henson return from the Netflix seasons, talking about a late-night diner to hit up, referring to a diner called Becky's on 8th Avenue that has been closed, which sets up Matt and Fisk needing to meet in a different diner at the end of this episode. Foggy then says,
Dark times indeed.
Oh, Foggy, you don't know how dark things are about to get, baby. I'm sorry.
Karen jokes that the Hell's Kitchen nostalgia is running thin, and Foggy says,
Not nostalgia, reverence for the past, yet hope for the future.
Another meta line there. Even Wool and Henson being in this opening scene is a blessing born out of reverence for the past era of the series. Daredevil Born Again, when it was first announced, was a harder reboot that recast some characters and really had no plans to include Foggy or Karen, but the series was creatively overhauled to be more of a true 4th season of the show that fans remembered, and that included bringing back these characters. 3 of the 9 episodes this season were completely rewritten from Dario Scardapane, who had worked on the Punisher series, and it was reshot by the new incoming directors Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, who had worked on Moon Knight and Loki, including this pilot episode. But you'll note that episode 2 was credited to Matt Corman and Chris Ord, so that was more representative of the previous version of this series.
They go to Josie's bar for the retirement of Detective Cherry. Josie the bartender is played by Susan Varon, and she returns for a cameo after being a regular in the first season in 2015 and appearing for 1 episode of The Defenders.
Karen and Matt established that they're under a friends code at the moment, which could suggest why Matt was so okay hooking up with She-Hulk during those times. And they say,
no one's above the law.
Nope. Certainly not you, Miss Page.
Just a little reminder that Karen did totally shoot and kill Kingpin's assistant Wesley in Season 1, and Matt finally learned about that in Season 3. Detective Sherry tells Detective Kim that he was thinking about restoring a farmhouse upstate. Just a reminder that we know of at least one farmhouse in upstate New York that used to belong to the Stark family.
Oof. Nikki M. James plays Kristen McDuffie, an attorney chatting with Foggy. In Mark Waid's Daredevil run in 2011, Kristen McDuffie was an assistant district attorney who ends up setting up a law firm with Matt in San Francisco. Their relationship ends up turning into something something romantic. And at the end of season 3, Foggy was engaged to his girlfriend Marcy Stahl, another lawyer, but things seem to have stalled with Stahl.
Foggy reminds us that he once worked for Hogarth, Chow, and Benowitz. That was the firm of Jerry Hogarth, originally introduced in Jessica Jones, but later came back in many of the Netflix Marvel shows. Jerry complains about vigilantes like Daredevil and White Tiger, who appears on the TV news beating up bodega robbers. We get to know Hector a bit better in episode 2, and Cherry and Kim bemoan,
"We get sued and they get cheered."
This echoes what Dex and Bullseye had said about vigilantes in season 3. Fisk used that sentiment to manipulate Dex into putting on the Daredevil suit.
Josie toasts Cherry.
May you be in heaven a full half hour, for the devil knows you're dead!
Before the devil knows you're dead is a common saying, but it also applies to Matt as Daredevil, who will soon find himself on a ticking clock before this devil knows Foggy is dead.
Oh, Foggy says that there's a 20-year-old bottle of O'Melveny's behind the bar. O'Melveny and Myers is the name of an actual law firm that has represented Marvel Studios on a number of patent lawsuits. I just brought it up because it's not the name of any spirit that I'm aware of or Marvel character that we know of. But I just thought it was an interesting name.
Oh my god.
Anyway, it's kind of like them saying, like, we got lawyers here too at Marvel Studios.
Think about it.
And they'll beat you up at night, because our lawyers are vigilantes.
I get it.
Don't go after them. Anyway, so Matt's senses heighten, and there's this interesting lens flare around his ear and a dolly zoom on Matt, and the aspect ratio shifts to focus tight on Foggy outside, like through the narrowed eyes. Matt hears someone gulping a beer, the crack of a billiards table, and the squeaking mouse. Might want to get that checked, Josie. And then to Foggy's phone call with his client, Benny, frantic that there are men at his safe house.
In the Netflix era, Matt's heightened senses and hearing was often shown in different ways and described as him perceiving a painting he called A World on Fire.
But this depiction here recalls Peter Parker's Spidey sense, I would say, especially in Spider-Man No Way Home, where remember there was a dolly zoom and a dubbing of ambient sound, like Peter's dread moment in No Way Home. Matt is feeling his own kind of devil sense that something really, really terrible is about to happen to his best friend. Now, obviously, Matt doesn't have any kind of cosmic arachno frequency or predictive power, but he is a good enough listener to the world that I think he can scan the vibe of Hell's Kitchen on any given night, feel the rhythm of various movements around the city that we open this episode with, that he can just feel it and worry that this phone call is Foggy being lured into a trap.
We then see a paper clip unfolded to pick a lock, and then that same paper clip used to kill a fly with expert precision. Obviously, this is Dex back on the loose. Someone, please, put him back in prison. He's about to do something horrible. Using a paperclip this way is a nod to the introductory scene of Colin Farrell's Bullseye in the 2003 Daredevil film, where he used a straightened paperclip to kill a guy in a pub. And that movie's ending scene, which showed an injured Bullseye killing a fly with a syringe. Ooh. Gloved hands reach up to screw the light bulb, revealing the concentric circles of a Bullseye target on the back of them.
Now, we last saw Bullseye, aka Dex, Benjamin Poindexter, in Daredevil season 3. He's played by Wilson Bethel. He was a mentally unhinged FBI agent turned serial killer with perfect aim and the ability to turn any object into a deadly weapon. For a time, Wilson Fisk exploited Dex as a fake Daredevil to try to ruin Matt's reputation. But Matt, Foggy, and Karen worked tirelessly to expose this fake Daredevil. After Dex crashes Fisk and Vanessa's wedding, Fisk broke his back, but in the ending scene of the season, we saw that Dex was getting a new spine made out of a metal called cognium by a surgeon named Kenji Oyama, aka Lord Darkwind, father to Yuriko Oyama, aka the mutant Lady Deathstrike. Now, in the comics, Bullseye's metallic backbone is adamantium, and now that adamantium was introduced in Captain America Brave New World with potential medical uses, we were wondering if maybe that metal could get retconned as the backbone of this series. Other than Dex being a homicidal maniac who murders a ton of people, it's not clear what he's been up to all these years since, or why only now he targets Foggy Nelson, and who might actually have sent Dex and why.
Foggy tells Matt that he stashed his client Benny after something that went down in Red Hook. Red Hook is a small town in New York, and in X-Men Dark Phoenix, Jean Grey's hometown was Red Hook. And it also came up in the pilot of Legion as a past place where David Haller's mutant powers had a traumatic episode. Red Hook comes up later in this episode as well.
Matt suits up and uses his Billy Club's cables to scale up a building, and once again we hear the 2015 Netflix era theme music by John Pisano, arranged for this series by the Newton brothers. The suit he wears in the series is a further redesign from the West Coast yellow and red suit that he wore in She-Hulk. This one is all red and not afraid of the ruby red era that we saw in the Ben Affleck Daredevil, and I like it. We get a great hero shot when he lands on the fire escape in front of the church, and we see a stained glass window depicting a dove, a symbol of peace, the opposite of what this Matt's about to get into.
Oh no. Matt's clubs got the cable upgrade in Daredevil season 2, but the Netflix era was pretty limited with the wire work. In this flashy reshot pilot, Matt goes full Spider-Man, which includes it being a little unclear what above the frame his cables are actually attaching to when he swings. That also consists with some thwippy sound effects mixed into the cable burst.
But Matt Matt's senses go off again when he super hears Foggy's next call with Benny, who said that the gunman just wanted to know where Foggy was, and Matt dives off the roof, but before we know it...
He said someone's looking...
Oh no! That blood squib went right off in Karen's face. This poor girl's always getting covered in blood.
Two cops rush out and are immediately taken out with headshots. Dex steps up to Josie's and tosses a smoke grenade inside. Karen whips out a gun. After what she did to Wesley, it's clearly obvious she knows what to do with a firearm. Dex points his gun at Karen, but Matt swings in and tackles Dex through the window. Dex says, "Hello, Karen," in the exact same tone as he did in season 3 when he was dressed as Daredevil for the first time and killed a bunch of reporters at the Bulletin.
Hello, Karen. Hello, Karen.
That time he said, "Hello, Karen, it's nice to see you again." And again, he just killed a dude right behind her, and she pulled a gun on him that time too.
Yeah, it's like she can never escape this cycle of violence.
And this is the same gun somehow.
Yeah. Now, what follows is an incredible oner fight sequence that lasts over 3 minutes without any obvious cuts, though we assume that there must have been at least a few hidden in the smoke and the camera movements and the action. But the camera we see dollying forward and backward through like 6 to 7 different setups, and it's super impressive, even if they clearly shot this on a soundstage. Daredevil season 2 tried to one-up the iconic hallway long take of the first season with like a stairwell long take, but in that one, it went downward. This one goes up, which is a lot harder for a camera crew to do, all the way up to the roof. So I think we should break this down beat by beat. So Matt and Dex crash through the window. We're in the same shot here, right? So Dex throws another smoke grenade to make this all extra smoky, obviously just to make it easier for the stuntmen to blend in. Matt disarms Dex. They go at it for a bit. Matt takes a blade to the shoulder and then does a combination of a kick plus a spin kick. He loves the spin kicks. Sparks shower down on them both. Matt flings his club and catches it perfectly on the rebound. And then he angrily grunts while using the club to knock out one of the daggers in his arm. At some point in the madness here, his horn gets knocked out. I couldn't figure out where exactly it was.
Next setup, we hear Karen with Foggy outside, and that causes Matt to hesitate as Dex throws another dagger at his head. We push past him, following Cherry outside, where we see Karen applying pressure to Foggy's wound, and his breathing is getting strained.
But then we dolly back into the smoky bar. Still have not obviously cut here, though there probably were some concealed cuts, as Matt and Dex continue fighting. Another spin kick, but the impact of Dex hitting the bar causes the dagger to unluckily fling back into Matt's back. He uses the club to take out the lights of the club, perhaps trying to level the playing field against an opponent who can see.
Patron slide doors close to the billiard hall, which really just seems to set up Dex crashing down these doors a moment later. Matt Cable lassos a brave detective out of the way, but in doing so, takes another dagger to the chest. The female detective on the right hits Dex with a pool stick, but he knocks her out with a cue ball.
Oh my God.
Jesus Christ, someone stop this man. Dex then throws two balls at once, one toward Matt and one ricocheting off the walls to knock out the final woman on the right. And I assume the cue balls and daggers were CG, but they had to choreograph the blocking of the camera timing perfectly, knowing where these projectiles would go, which is really impressive.
Matt attends to this poor convulsing woman, and then the camera moves back up the back stairs as Dex, who's now winded, trudges up the stairs. He immediately kills a guy who's just asking what's going on, and then his partner begins screaming, and then Dex hits her too. Presumably one of these people were holding a can of something, because Dex picks up this can on the next level, and then after Matt bounces his club off the wall and ceiling to take out the light, the camera whip pans back to Matt as Dex chucks that can at his chest. Matt bonks him in the head with the club and tries blocking more daggers, but he misses several of them, which lodge into his shoulders. Both men at this point are just super spent. Matt gets distracted again by Karen's panicked pleading outside and Foggy's slowing heartbeat. So now we just follow Dex up the stairs and we get a close-up of his eyes looking completely insane under the mask.
Now we follow Dex out onto the roof where he thinks he's in the clear, but Matt zips up and lands in a Spider-Man pose. He leaps down and punches Dex, and the two both stick each other with daggers.
And the camera tilts downward to the street below where Foggy bleeds out, and paramedics have only now arrived on the scene. We tilt back up, and by now Matt is given the business to an unmasked Dex, and we see now very clearly that one of the horns on Matt's mask has been broken off.
Oh, wow. And only now do we finally have a clear cut to Karen's bloody hands on Foggy's chest as he dies. Karen's hands jolt off his chest, and we cut back to Matt on the roof, who screams at Dex, "Why? Why?" And Dex only laughs. He just laughs, and Matt tosses him off the roof.
Matt removes his mask, revealing his identity to Cherry. Now, while Matt should have heard Cherry approaching, he is so emotionally distraught, and his senses were so dialed in on Foggy, listening for breaths and heartbeats that he knows will never come, that nothing else matters in this moment.
Dex, like Michael Myers, twitches back to life. The way his eye opens reminds us of his eye opening during his spinal surgery in the season 3 finale scene, illuminated by the cognium. Having cognium or adamantium in his body might have absorbed some of that impact.
A vocal version of John Pisano's theme returns as we follow Matt's discarded mask as it falls to the street. That broken off horn hole forms the distinct shape of a letter D for Daredevil, or for dying inside. While comic readers have long wanted a version of Matt's suit to have the DD emblem on his chest, we now now finally get the letter D formed on the suit, but only after paying like the heaviest cost.
The mask transitions into the new opening credit imagery for the Daredevil Born Again, and in the Netflix era, the credits were shots of blood oozing on various surfaces like the buildings and bridges of Hell's Kitchen, Lady Justice, the violence of the city, giving the unseen world a shape for Matt. But contrast, these opening titles depict these images in brittle stone that crumbles. Like for Matt, these are fossilized gargoyles from the past he does not wish to revisit.
So we start with Matt's mask with a broken horn, and from here we go to the shoulders and bald head of Wilson Fisk, the angle that we would often see of him as he stared at his Rabbit in a Snowstorm painting. Also, the same outline of his bulky form that teased his return in the closing credits animation of episodes of Hawkeye.
We get the Lady Justice, a crack forms down her head. Manhattan, it looks like we're facing south, looking down the East River.
We see a lapel of a suit jacket and then the steeple of Matt's church.
The closed fist of Wilson Fisk, a wedding band on his ring finger. The scales of justice are starting to crumble.
Then we see an NYPD badge numbered 1964. And 1964 was the year Daredevil debuted in Marvel Comics. We see the Nelson, Murdock, and Page sign crumbling.
Yeah, no more Nelson. No more Nelson, just Murdock and Page now. I'm not over it. I'm not over it. The church collapses some more, followed by shots of an interior office desk, chair, and a lamp. Either Nelson, Murdock, and Page's office, or maybe Fisk's mayor office.
And we see a Statue of Liberty head. Now, this would be where I would bring in my latest theory obsession that the Statue of Liberty is going to be how Marvel Studios links all the separate Marvel universes, since it has shown up in X-Men, Avengers Endgame, Spider-Man Far From Home, Venom The Last Dance, even Fantastic Four First Steps. Or I could just be reaching.
The broken horn from Matt's mask tumbles on its own. As these broken pieces are now miraculously coming back together, a new powerful statue of Daredevil forms, ready to fight with a red light glowing behind him.
So we catch back up with Matt listening to Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds Into My Arms on his record player. Text fades in on screen. 1 year later, using the same one word fading in at a time text animation as 5 years later. That reveal in Avengers Endgame, and it hits just as hard.
According to a date we saw in Captain America Brave New World, the present day of the MCU is April 2027. The universe is typically 2 years or so ahead of our time, but there's a New Year's Eve celebration, and we don't know if it's 2026 going into 2027 or 2027 going into 2028. Fisk is running in a recall election, which can happen at any time in the year, and it's not necessarily only in November.
The newscaster says that the crowded candidate field includes 2 former city council members and a stand-up comedian. And I'm going to assume that the stand-up comedian is Ralph Boner, who mentioned doing a one-man show in New Jersey and seems like a kind of fringe political conspiracy theorist nutty enough to run for New York City mayor.
Yeah, absolutely. If you listen closely, you can also hear the newscaster say this.
Seeing street art around the city are not alone. The colorful and provocative murals have been popping up all around the city almost overnight.
This is a hint of an upcoming villain, the Muse, the Banksy-inspired serial killer who uses blood and human remains in his art, whom we met in episode 2 and shows up at the end of this episode.
Matt picks up the Braille program for Foggy's funeral. This is a year later, so it means that Matt saved it and he's keeping it with him leading up to Dex's sentencing. Wilson Fisk's breakfast is uncovered. 1 egg white omelet with a single asparagus. I thought it was a poached egg, but when he cuts into it, there's no
middle.
Yolk. There's no yolk. It's just an egg white omelet and 1 asparagus, which I think is an important note because in season 1, Fisk would often make his own breakfast every morning. And that man kept his yolks in those eggs. So I suppose now he's like running for public office. He has to slim down a bit. Thank you to BetterHelp for sponsoring this video. Relationships are complicated. All of them, even the good ones, especially the good ones. Navigating any relationship takes a lot of work and a lot of introspection. If you find yourself stuck in a pattern of pulling away when somebody starts to get close or feeling jealous of your partner's friends, that's going to get in the way of meaningful relationships that could otherwise be enriching your life. That's something therapy can help with. And our sponsor BetterHelp can help you get started. Instead of being stuck in an endless loop of questioning yourself, you can talk through relationship concerns with someone who's trained to help you find real answers. BetterHelp has made starting therapy as easy as taking a quiz. Just fill out a questionnaire and you will match with a therapist in as little as a couple days. Easily switch therapists anytime at no extra cost if it's not the right fit. They carefully make sure therapists on the platform are well qualified and their customer support team is there to help you if you have any questions. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. Going to therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. There are so many kinds of relationships that can be improved by therapy, not just romantic ones. Click the link in the description, scan the QR code, or go to betterhelp.com/newrockstars and get 10% off your first month of therapy.
Fisk goes through his suits, pausing briefly on the white one Vanessa picked for their wedding day before opting for the gray one.
And we cut to this frightening image of this painting. This is Ilya Repin's 1885 painting, Ivan the Terrible and his son Ivan, depicting the moment the Russian Tsar Ivan the Terrible in 1581 cradled his dying son after having struck him in the head in a fit of rage. It's one of Russia's most famous paintings, and it's an example of the theme directors Benson and Moorhead are exploring with the series, the brutal consequences of extreme violence. Because Ivan the Terrible couldn't control himself, he left his throne with no heir. We can wonder if Kingpin might have a similar fear. After Maya Lopez was uninterested in taking over his empire, who exactly will he leave his kingdom to?
The different criminal factions debate turf, saying that Red Hook is exempt, and Red Hook coming back up again, suggesting it's kind of a neutral zone that no criminal gang can actually claim, and maybe that's why Foggy stashed Benny there.
Victor insults Luca for his stupid tracksuit, suggesting that this guy on the left is a new point person for the Tracksuit Mafia gang. That was a group in the Hawkeye series that we learned reports to Wilson Fisk, but we don't see anyone wearing the dark red tracksuit that the gang in the Hawkeye series wore, and there's no mention of the ones who were shrunken in their van and eaten by an owl.
Oh my gosh,
Remember?
yeah,
That
I forgot
happened.
about that. Yeah, they straight up were just taken away. This meeting is being run by Vanessa, dressed all in white, and in season 3, she told Fisk that she wanted to take a more active role, and it was she who ordered Bullseye to kill an FBI agent, which Matt used as leverage against Fisk to get him back down. It's not clear yet how Fisk and Vanessa got out of their legal issues, but Fisk is so powerful, he always gets away with everything.
How does he keep getting away? Also, this painting on the left is The Nightmare, a 1781 by Swiss artist Henry Fuseli, showing a woman with a demonic incubus sitting on her chest. Many believe this painting inspired Mary Shelley for a scene in her 1818 novel Frankenstein, considered the first horror novel. And this painting has been considered a key visual depicting Jungian archetypes. I imagine this is meant to reflect the white-dressed Vanessa and her restless sleep in this marriage with Wilson Fisk.
This meeting is conducted in some off-the-book shipping warehouse where these goods are stored and transferred most likely. Remember that Vanessa met Fisk as a high-end art dealer, so these are probably part of her collection. One of these shutter doors opens and hello, Mr. Wilson's here. He twitches his fingers, which is a gesture Fisk would always do, like when Matt first saw his hand in the back of the town car early in season 1.
Fisk ends the meeting with just a single word. Vanessa. We see throughout the series that he now has a scar on that side of his head, which seems to redden when he gets really mad. Part of his recovery was receiving a cybernetic implant that allows him to see augmented reality arms and hands to communicate with deaf people. And we saw that in the Echo series, but we also have to wonder if there might be other data points that he can see in his vision floating on top of people, like maybe heart rate. Like this guy might now be able to tell if someone is lying, which Matt has a super ability to do.
Okay. And Echo Maya Lopez defeated Fisk by channeling the power of her ancestors to place her hands over Fisk's eye and his heart and mentally bring him back to that childhood memory when his father abused his mother. It's not clear if he was healed per se. Fisk references that here saying he was shattered and it took him months to put himself back together, but that he was awoken to two beacons of what he was and what he could be. His love for Vanessa and the possibility of leading the city without being a criminal.
This scene began with Vanessa's head framed by a circular ceiling light. Now we see Fisk's reflection on that table with his head in the ring of light, kind of like a halo, reflecting the saintly path he thinks he's now walking.
Next thing we see is a video insert of the BB Report, a news show hosted by BB Urich, who we later learn is Ben Urich's niece. It's interviews with average New Yorkers revealing that Daredevil's been gone for a year and crime has increased and the folks want him back. This reminds us of Sam Raimi's street interviews in the 2002 Spider-Man film, and it's such a fun way to bring the lifeblood of the city into the story, though I do miss Jim Norton saying this.
He stinks and I don't like him.
I mean, that could apply to Daredevil too. He's still walking around New York somewhere.
I'm sure this cameo might make it into Daredevil. Someone's gonna say
it would be great. We see that Matt has a new firm called Murdock and McDuffie, again referring to that 2011 storyline where the two go into business together. Matt now speaks at Dex's sentencing. Matt talks about how justice won't truly be served in this instance because Foggy Nelson can never come back. But he's interrupted when he hears steady heartbeats and the sounds of Karen's heels on the floor outside and a new heartbeat, reminding us of one of the first times he talked to Karen in season 1. He heard her heartbeat to know how truthful she was being in that moment.
Dex stands to be sentenced. He's restrained in a way to keep his hands covered because even if his fingers were free, he could grab hold of something and fling it to kill someone else. The judge says his name is Benjamin Leonard Poindexter, and they got his middle name from the 2004 Bullseye Greatest Hit storyline that explored the character's backstory and named him Leonard. Dex then gets sentenced to a life without parole, but we'll see how long, he stays behind bars. He'll probably break out. Or someone's gonna break him out. Yeah. That's how it goes.
Yep. Now we find out Karen is moving to San Francisco, which again is where Matt moves in the 2011 Daredevil run. Also, this could be where Karen could run into Scott Lang and the Ant family and Shang-Chi. We got some buddies in San Francisco. We learned that what whatever was there with Matt and Karen's relationship, half in, half out, ended with Foggy's death. She says half in, half out, half in, half out. I wouldn't mind half in, half out.
Stop.
But all of that ended with Foggy's death, and Matt left behind being a daredevil, perhaps because the last thing Foggy said to him, remember, was, I didn't want to give you an excuse. And that's why Foggy didn't tell him about Benny. And maybe Matt's now just applying that as like the best thing he can do for his dead friend.
100. Almost like a ring or a house key being returned in a breakup, Karen gives Matt the broken off horn that snapped off in the fight with Dex at Josie's. It happened at the same point in the smoke. She held on to it all this time, hoping that Matt would suit up again and think, you know what, hey, where's the other horn at?
But, you know, he can't see it, so he'd have to like feel around.
Yeah, he'd be like, what
hey,
is this?
I'm missing a horn. I should call Karen.
Karen!
Go back half in.
Go back half in. No coffee, half in.
So Matt, while he's chopping dinner in the dark, not needing to see that parsley because he can hear it screams with its super hearing, he hears Fisk on the TV announcing his candidacy, and on the word mayor, the audio shifts from diegetic to loudly mixed in with Matt's hearing.
Tonight I'm declaring my candidacy for mayor of New York.
And it's just because that job title is so triggering for Matt to hear this guy going after.
The Mayor Fisk storyline comes from Charles Soule's run of Daredevil comics in the past decade. Fisk runs as an independent and enjoys public support following the Hydra takeover of the city and the Secret Empire storyline. He wins, having rigged the vote to be sure, and promises to restrain vigilantes in the city. Matt also served as a deputy mayor for a time, and Fisk fully outlaws vigilantism in the Devil's Reign storyline that comes after this.
Fisk meets with his campaign advisors, Sheila Rivera, played by Sabrina Guevara, and Buck Cashman, played by Artie Frusciante. So Artie Frusciante is billed fourth for this episode, and he plays Sir Carl Corey on House of the Dragon. That's the knight who escapes with Sir Leonor Velaryon after he fakes his death. And that might be because in the comics, Buck Cashman is a pretty nasty villain named Bullet, introduced in Daredevil number 250 in 1988. We also see Michael Gandolfini, son of James Gandolfini, playing Daniel Blake, a young staffer who's super plugged into social media. And a fun bit of trivia, Robert Eiler, who played Tony Soprano's son AJ Soprano on The Sopranos, had a small role in the 2003 Daredevil film. And it's kind of like how Jon Favreau played Foggy Nelson in that film and then joined Charlie Cox in a scene in Spider-Man No Way Home. It's like poetry, it rhymes.
On the screen is real-life newsman Pat Kiernan from New York 1. He cameos on the TV wall. We saw him also in Spider-Man No Way Home, and he appeared in the news broadcast in the Hawkeye series. We love you, Pat. If you're listening, you keep showing up in our lives. We see Fisk in many of these shots from the back of his head, just like the opening credits image. Fisk now wears an American flag pin and an apple pin for the Big Apple. Fisk's campaign slogan is Fisk can fix it, which is a sneaky bit of wordplay considering in the comics he won by fixing the election.
Now, there's another cameo on this video wall that we only know because we actually interviewed this VFX artist, but on the video wall on the lower left-hand quadrant, there is another news show where people are conferencing in from their homes, and this guy on the right is actually a cameo by VFX artist Darby Fiscinto, who I interviewed from Cantina Creative. Cantina does a lot of the VFX on the interfaces that we see in shots of titles like Deadpool and Wolverine and Loki and Daredevil Born Again. Well done, Darby. Matt super hears the people of New York gradually supporting Fisk for mayor. There's this newspaper stack, and we see a patriotic glamour shot of Fisk on the front page with this headline, Wilson Fisk campaign gains momentum heading into polls. And then on the left, we see the headline, Rise of the Metaverse, Virtual Worlds Redefine Social Interaction. I love it when prop newspapers are made by crew people who have never picked up an actual newspaper in their lives. This featurey metaverse headline is not the kind of news that you would see on any front page, but it does seem to be here for a specific reason, maybe to reflect the way Daniel Blake is playing social media to win Fisk the election, but also has me thinking again, what virtual world Fisk could be living with that implant in his head.
Matt meets Dr. Heather Glenn, and she first appeared in Daredevil issue number 126 in 1975 as a love interest to Matt Murdock. She was a wealthy socialite and daughter of Maxwell Glenn, an industrialist involved in corporate crimes. She becomes controlled by the Purple Man, and she has a specific fate in the comics that we don't really want to get into just yet, just in case, it shows up in the show later.
Yeah, Matt realizes that Kirsten actually set up Matt to receive therapy from Heather. Matt can tell from Heather's voice that she's from Queens, saying he's been to Queens recently because he did represent Peter Parker from Queens, but it's not clear how much Matt would have remembered from those sessions after Doctor Strange's memory wipe made everyone forget that Spider-Man was Peter Parker. But Matt does name drop the deli Sal, Chris, and Charlie's, which is a real-life sandwich joint in Queens, though I think he should have gone with Del Mar's. They do have that wonderful bodega cat.
Cherry, now working as Matt's PI, says half the cops hate Fisk and the other half would jump off the Chrysler building for him. We saw one guy impaling himself on a sharp piece of barb in season 1 just out of the fear after mentioning Fisk's name. lying. Next, we get another BB report segment where New Yorkers debate Fisk crushing a guy's head, referring to Fisk slamming Anatoly's head in a car door. You remember that scene in season 1?
Fisk debates his biggest rival, Councilman Crestnut, and Fisk says that he was a victim of vigilante violence when he was shot, suggesting that Maya Lopez was one of those vigilantes, even though she was definitely a fighter who worked in the gang that reported to him.
Matt confronts Fisk outside a campaign event, and I love how Buck gives Matt a stink eye before Matt even approaches Fisk, which tells us that Fisk briefed Buck and the others on his past enemies to keep a lookout at the events. This also might foretell Buck becoming the anti-Daredevil villain Bullet in his own right later on in the series.
Matt and Fisk meet at the Square Diner, which is a real diner in the Tribeca neighborhood, and it's the same diner where Karen would meet Ben Urich in season 1. Matt says that Fisk's step is lighter, and he must have lost weight and gained muscle, which I think is Matt's way of reminding Fisk that despite being blind, he can still perceive everything. Charlie Cox talked about this scene in particular, which was inspired by the iconic diner scene with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro and Michael Mann's Heat, and how in the original version of the show, Fisk and Matt weren't even going to meet each other until a later episode in the season. But this reworked pilot centers around the two meeting face to face, I would say. And one thing that caught my eye early on in the scene, directly in the center of the frame between them, across the street outside, is this dude wearing a white hoodie, sipping a coffee, seemingly staring directly at them. Now, maybe this is just a nosy onlooker who was watching the scene get shot when they were shooting the scene. Could be just a guy in the background. Or could this be a cameo by Bastion, aka Muse, a hoodied street artist and a serial killer who we're gonna meet a bit more later.
Fisk says he tried to mentor a daughter figure once, referring to Maya Lopez, and Matt reminds Fisk that she shot him in the face. Fisk says he misses Becky's diner, the same closed Hell's Kitchen diner that Foggy mentioned in the opening scene. Fisk says that Matt has come up in the world, which is a subtle diss toward Foggy and Kieran, because he's saying that Matt basically was more successful with McDuffie than he ever was with Nelson and Paige.
A guy knocks on the window to say, "Hey, Fisk!" And I just love that dopey little wave he gives Matt, too. Like, he's like, "Hey, he's your friend? Hey, friend!" Fisk claims that Matt tried to kill him over the years, but Matt denies it, saying he only tried to incarcerate him. This despite the fact that in the chats with Karen and the others in past seasons, Matt certainly expressed a desire to kill Fisk at various points. Fisk says that he had nothing to do with Foggy's death.
I kept that promise.
This is a reference to the agreement from the end of season 3 that if Fisk ever went after Karen or Foggy, Matt would reveal that Vanessa ordered the hit on FBI agent Ray Nadeem.
Fisk claims that Kingpin is not back, a parallel to Matt telling Karen that there's no Daredevil anymore, and both men are clearly lying to themselves. Fisk then says this:
I'm gonna make New York a better future.
And right on this line, a glare from a passing car hits the lens to create a gleam right over Matt's eyes, like the beacon that Fisk claimed was now inside of him is blinding Matt.
Matt warns Fisk to stay in his lane and he'll stay in his, but Fisk warns Matt that when he's mayor, he's not going to tolerate vigilantes. And then after a second date with Heather, Matt superhears Pat Kiernan, saying Fisk has been elected with 53% of the vote, becoming the 112th mayor of the city. For reference, current New York City Mayor Eric Adams is the 110th mayor.
Yeah, because time, 2 years, right?
So I guess we're like 2 years ahead, but you know, they're on a different timeline. They didn't have, there was never an Eric Adams.
And they
mayor.
made sure that there was one between them that we don't know, who's the 111th. A pro-Fisk crowd charges past and Matt smoothly moves Heather to the side, and we cut to Fisk in his campaign headquarters. Sheila holds her hand out to Fisk in disbelief, and it's hard to see this, but Daniel hugs her from the side, and Sheila's just like, "Oh, get off me, kid." Fisk meets Vanessa on the roof overlooking the Lexington Hotel, and this is when he tells her he knows about her affair with a man named Adam.
So do you think Adam Warlock is making this face when they bang?
I'm closing my eyes because I don't want to see it. I know what scene you're talking about.
And she's just like,
Honestly, his face is much better than Wilson Fisk.
Yeah, I'd take that face. Adam Warlock's just flying across the city to hook up with her when Wilson Fisk is taking a nap.
He's like, I know you're talking to Adam Warlock, the giant gold man.
So we see this billboard ad for Rogers the Musical. Of course, the Captain America themed musical, first introduced in the Hawkeye series. Hey, do you think when Adam Warlock was banging Vanessa, he was like, "I can do this all day"?
You're never gonna let this go.
Nope, I won't. I'm gonna run this into the ground.
This is gonna run into. There's only one Adam that I know in the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
I gotta force him in this. Yeah.
As Matt walks Heather home and gives her a good night smooch, we also see a street artist painting a mural of Fisk showing his two faces and the moniker King framed around the art on a dollar bill. There's also a crown above Fisk's head. This artist is probably what I assume is the Muse, who we'll meet later.
Fisk says in his speech, "We have a long road ahead," which harkens back to his earlier line, "I took the less traveled road," which suggests that he's reading some Robert Frost, who, in my opinion, is America's most basic and overrated poet. Pick up some E.E. Cummings or Ginsberg, my friends. Fisk seems to be evoking the miles to go before I sleep line of, the other Robert Frost poem. But the final words of Fisk's speech, I love New York, come with such this forced smile from Wilson Fisk that, like Matt hearing Heather Glenn straining to shorten her A's and O's to shake off her Queen's accent, we can see Fisk strain to pretend like he actually cares about the city.
In the cheering crowd, Matt can hear a woman screaming as she's being chased by a guy, already seeing that the 53% who supported Fisk include some dudes who might not be making the city any safer, who now feel encouraged and empowered to do these bad things.
As TV on the radio is staring at the sign plays, Fisk looks down at Matt in the crowd with a bluish white light on his face, while Matt looks up at Fisk with a red light on him, just like that Daredevil statue in the opening credits. Matt stares directly up in Fisk's direction. How does he know that that's Fisk up there? Well, it suggests that he can hear Fisk's heartbeat through all this shouting. Through a world on fire, he can see clear as day the kid with the box of matches.
On to episode 2. This episode is dedicated to Camar de los Reyes, the actor who plays Hector Ayala, aka White Tiger, for the season, who passed away unfortunately in December 2023 after a battle with cancer. His storyline was part of the original version of the show before the creative overhaul, so his scenes were wrapped before the reshoots in 2024. You'll actually notice that episode 2 was credited to the writers Matt Corman and Chris Ord, the previous showrunners, and it's actually pretty impressive how seamless they reshot the pilot and it flows so perfectly into episode 2.
Yeah, it's really impressive. Mayor-elect Wilson Fisk refuses to let his scar be covered with makeup, as he loved bringing up being shot and scarred by what he called a vigilante during his campaign. His speech leads with his wife Vanessa, who also appears in a framed photo behind his desk, and we see a mug with an American flag. The speech airs in Times Square on New Year's Eve, and it's just pretty funny because people are booing. They're like, yeah, get back to Seacrest. Why is the mayor interrupting the countdown with the speech? But there are a lot of Easter eggs here in Times Square.
On the left, a billboard for Rogers the Musical, and above that, a sign for Harlem's Paradise, the nightclub from the Luke Cage series that used to be run by Cornell and Mariah Stokes, but is now run by Luke himself. We're not sure if we'll see Luke Cage in this season, but he does exist, and his storyline does exist in this world.
We also see a sign for Pingo Doce juice. That's a Brazilian juice from the bottling plant where Bruce Banner worked in the 2008 Edward Norton Incredible Hulk film. One of those bottles also showed up in Deadpool and Wolverine. And then on the Forever 21 banner, there's also a sign for, of course, Disney Plus. And then a sign from Pim Van Dyne. That's a charity foundation formed out of Pim Tech by Hope Van Dyne and Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Remember? Several people in the crowd are wearing top hats and knit beanies and have those boomsticks that are printed with the Pim Van Dyne logo. So did the foundation sponsor this whole festivities? Did they offer their resizing technology to help the people of New York in some way, like maybe shrinking garbage? That'd be useful because they just pile it on the street there. And episode 2 doesn't really give us any indication of what's happening here.
Fisk says that at any time the city feels like it could explode, which is rich coming from this guy, considering it was his street war that led to the suicide bombers blowing up all across the city in season 1. Then Fisk says this.
We don't need a gun-toting vigilante who wears a skull on his chest, or a man who dresses in a spider outfit.
Obviously, he's referencing the Punisher Frank Castle and Spider-Man Peter Parker, and this is great for so many reasons. First, Peter Parker heard this and said, finally, someone thinks I'm a man and not just a boy.
It's also just great to hear the MCU Kingpin call out the MCU Spider-Man for the first time, since in the comics, Kingpin is one of Spider-Man's best-known recurring villains. This grouping Spider-Man with vigilantes like the Punisher and Daredevil is taken really directly from the Mayor Fisk storyline when he gives a similar short list in a speech railing against vigilantism. We also just appreciate the wording of this because Marvel Studios has to be kind of careful about how they reference Spider-Man in non-Sony co-produced projects. Brad Winderbaum recently confirmed that they can feature Spider-Man in animated titles on Disney Plus, but not live-action titles unless they're producing some movie with Sony. A man who dresses in a spider outfit is also how the people of New York might describe what they remember Spider-Man as being, since again, after Doctor Strange's memory wipe spell, no one remembers that the person under the mask is someone named Peter Parker.
Matt uses his super hearing to sense how the news is hitting the people of New York. One woman can't handle the idea, and another guy loves him. Since Fisk won in a recall election, we don't know how long he's been mayor-elect, and we don't know his inauguration timeline. We don't even know what year we're crossing into. And I gotta say, it's a little weird to have shots of a Times Square on like New Year's Eve and no year is visible anywhere. I don't think I've ever been to a party where it did not say the year during a New Year's Eve party.
It's like they snapped off the numbers off the top of their glasses.
Take those glasses. Yeah, they ripped off the 2 and whatever it was at the end, they kept the zeros. I don't even know. But we assume the exact timeline got a little fuzzy when they reshot the pilot to fit in with this episode. episode.
Hector Ayala heads down the steps into the subways and he speaks Spanish to, we think, his wife on the phone. That translates to, I already told you where I was. I had some things to do and I ran out of time. Those things he was doing, probably White Tiger-ing, but it establishes that he and Soledad just disagree over whether he should be a vigilante. Hector sees these two guys, ununiformed cops, Shanahan and Powell, roughing up this third guy, who we later find out is named Nicky Torres, saying that Nicky was trying to dodge them and then they just straight up beat him up. So Hector, of course, intervenes, leading to a brutal fight. Nicky runs away and Shanahan trips on Hector directly into a passing subway, giving Hector the Karen Page blood spray treatment. Powell reveals that he and his now dead partner were NYPD.
Hector Ayala, aka White Tiger, was also introduced in 1975 as the second Latino superhero in Marvel Comics. Hector is a Puerto Rican student in New York City who discovers the 3 amulets of the Sons of the Tiger, and when worn, it turns him into the White Tiger. In the comics, he was often grouped with the Defenders Iron Fist and Shang-Chi. Carmel de los Reyes plays him in this posthumous release.
Sheila walks Fisk through his schedule, meeting with Fire Chief Carter and Police Commissioner Gallo, who we'll meet a bit later. Now, in season 3, the police commissioner was Christy Molina, who also hated Wilson Fisk and blamed him for the deaths of cops. So new Commissioner Gallo seems to have inherited that frosty attitude. Fisk wonders how old this desk is, and he mentions Fiorello LaGuardia, who is the 99th mayor of New York City, serving from 1934 to 1946. He was mayor when Steve Rogers and future Congressman-elect Bucky Barnes were hanging around Brooklyn. LaGuardia was extremely popular, reorganizing the police and overhauling public transit, considered really the best big city mayor in history, so much so that they named the worst airport after him.
No!
It's terrible.
It's nice. Oh my God. I would rather go to that than JFK. The people watching are like, Jessica's an idiot. I went to LaGuardia last time. I said, oh, this is so nice.
You just like it because they have like your pretzel stand that you like or whatever.
It's my specific pretzel stand right before I get on the freeway that's circling LaGuardia 24/7.
Fisk explains how LaGuardia stood up to Tammany Hall. And Tammany Hall, if you know from Gangs of New York, was the 19th century political operation that essentially ran New York City, really up until LaGuardia put an end to it during his term.
Fisk says that LaGuardia was a hero of his father's, reminding us all of Bill Fisk, who ran for the 3rd District Council in the 70s and lost and was then hammered to death by young Wilson. A close-up of his hand shows that his knuckles are bloody and raw. Who has Mayor Fisk been beating up? We also see his cufflinks. He wears his cufflinks as tokens inherited from his father.
Fisk plans to meet with District Attorney Hochberg. DA Benjamin Hochberg was another supporting character from the Charles Soule Daredevil run, first introduced in the 2nd issue in December 2015. Hochberg ends up being an ally to Matt Murdock in the DA's office in those comics, and later learns Daredevil's identity as Matt Murdock in Chip Zdarsky's run after this in 2020. In this TV series, Hochberg is the 3rd DA that we've met, after Samantha Reyes, who screwed over Frank Castle and then was shot in season 2, and her successor Blake Tower, whom Foggy ran against for DA in season 3 and then eventually backed him. DA Hochberg shows up late in this episode, played by John Benjamin Hickey, a longtime actor of stage and screen who played the ill-fated businessman and foe to Jerry Hogarth named Peter Leone in Jessica Jones season 3.
At the 15th precinct, Matt sidelines a DUI client as he hears the detectives trying to beat Hector into confession. Matt listens to Hector's heartbeat to see if he's lying, just like he did in the pilot episode when he went to represent the wrongly accused and blood-covered Karen. He listened to her heartbeat to determine she was innocent, but just like with Karen, he knows that there's something his new client is hiding from him. And it's just so sweet to see the scene though, because the reason Matt takes Hector pro bono is because of his past with Karen.
Yeah.
And now
nice.
Karen's gone forever. She's never coming back.
During a traffic jam on the way to Brooklyn, Daniel Blake says,
got Staten, don't need Manhattan.
Presumably, Daniel is from Staten Island or maybe from New Jersey, but he does appreciate the burbs more than the urban city center. We see that he wears a ring on his middle finger with his initials DB.
There's a sinkhole that the construction crew is waiting for a permit to work on, and Fisk just shows up and verbally approves of it because that's what he can do. And also, why is this hole even here? Is it the hand at it again? Is this some leftover infrastructure damage from the Green Goblin's pumpkin grenade, or maybe his big fat ass?
You know that meme, right? Where
yes, I assume it's the big fat ass. He dropped down on it. Fisk is always using the damaged infrastructure of New York to get ahead, just like he did in the years after the Battle of New York, exploiting the redevelopment and the Union Allied deal in season 1.
One thing we caught in the closed captioning of the scene, the cheering crowd includes one guy just shouting, yeah!
Well, here I am getting them done.
Which might be the first time we've gotten an F-bomb in a Disney Plus Marvel series. We got, an F-bomb in Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, but not on Disney Plus. Bob Iger's sacred Disney Plus.
As soon as James Gunn did it, they said, fine. Matt and Kirsten take on defending Ayala, and at his arraignment, Matt smells the Dracar Noir cologne being worn by all the cops in attendance. DA Hochberg, aka the Hawk, shows up, and it's a very big deal for the DA of a big city to show up personally just for an arraignment. The judge curtly denies bail, clearly not wanting to be on the wrong side of the cops.
Daniel sets up BB Urich for an interview with Fisk.
Just BB. I was named for my uncle.
Ben Urich.
Ah, Fisk's hand twitches because, yeah, he totally murdered her uncle, Ben Urich, with these bare hands in season 1. Now, it's not clear if BB knows this or even suspects it, but she does have some kind of adversarial view of the mayor, even though she was like onto him from the beginning. He respects it. I think she was onto him because like someone's got to cover this madman. She asks him about Gallo's upcoming resignation, followed by an expected walkout of NYPD cops. And then she crosses a line asking about Vanessa, as if Vanessa's kind of a Shelley Miscavige figure, right? Where is she?
Heather speaks at the Inkwell bookshop to promote her new book, Live Without Fear, which seems like it's meant to reflect, Daredevil's tagline of a man without fear. She says her next book will be about projected personas, how we curate versions of ourselves on social media and through masks. And then we cut to this dirty punk. This is actor Hunter Doohan, who plays Tyler on Netflix's Wednesday series. And he played a psychopath on that show too, so I think this boy's just typecasted. Yeah. He approaches Heather seeking therapy, and in his credits, his name is Bastion, but we're sure he'll be revealed as the Muse later.
Yeah, this is really the last we see of Bastion in episode 2, but in Charles Soleil's comic storyline, we never really learn what Muse's actual name is. Muse is a Banksy-inspired street artist who uses blood and other human remains in his public art displays and also ties into that Mayor Fisk saga. He's hinted at actually to be an inhuman, funny enough. His name being Bastion is not, I think, meant to be any reference to Bastion with different spelling. That's the X-Men villain who is a Sentinel-derived cyborg and technopath who carries out OZT, voiced by Theo James in X-Men 97.
Fisk's advisor, Buck, also asked for Heather Glenn's signature, setting up Buck to arrange the couple's therapy to Fisk and Vanessa. Fisk confronts Commissioner Gallo at Officer Shanahan's funeral, and Gallo is played by Michael Gaston, an actor who has been in a ton of titles, but we're just gonna single out, the immigration officer in Inception who lets DiCaprio through.
You're free to go, Mr. Cobb.
He's also always playing a cop. I think he's a Chicago PD too. He loves playing a cop.
Yeah, he rocks that mustache. Gallo tells Fisk that he plans to make Fisk's term as mayor shorter than Mayor Vance from 1874, who only lasted 1 month, and he calls Fisk a whiny kid who wants everyone to like him and a monster trying to rewrite his legacy.
See you around, Kingpin.
Fisk wasn't even called Kingpin until season 3 of the show, so this is something that he doesn't really like to hear.
Cherry and McDuffie meet Hector's wife, Soledad. There's a Puerto Rican flag hanging in their kitchen, and Cherry snoops through their room and finds Hector's white tiger suit with the tiger amulet. In the comics, the amulet had mystical powers, and it derives from the hidden city of Kunlun. Later, Hector implies that the amulet does give him powers, but that he wasn't wearing it when he fought the cops in the subway.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what those powers are. I'm very excited.
It just makes him a little quicker, gets his nails a little longer.
I just hope he glows a little bit.
Oh, yeah, that's true, yeah.
There's also this photo of a young woman on the wall. I thought this might be their daughter, but also this could be Hector's younger sister, Ava Ayala, who is the 5th incarnation of the White Tiger, introduced in Avengers Academy in 2011 and ties into the Heroes for Hire comics, has a role in Secret Wars, and since has been a fan favorite character who has appeared in a number of animated titles and games.
Matt goes on a dinner date with Heather and takes a call from Cherry. And now we worry about what price Matt will pay for getting distracted from his courtship of Heather.
Matt reveals to Hector that he knows he's a White Tiger vigilante, showing him the same angle of the bodega footage that we saw on the TV at Josie's in episode 1. Hector says that he wants people to know he was a vigilante, that with Daredevil gone, someone's got to protect the streets, and I like how Matt's kind of reflected on the glass there, so he's kind of like, well, if you're not going to do it, I'm going to do it, and Matt just can't say anything, but he does talk Hector down a little bit. Fisk makes Gallo wait 20 minutes outside his office, and then takes a big old bite of a cheesesteak sandwich as Gallo walks in, which is just a prop that he will be using to make his upcoming threat. Now, we have to imagine that some of these Fisk scenes here, especially since they have the Ayala version of Vanessa in the frame on the desk, were part of the reshoots. Specifically, Evan noticed this shot of Buck Cashman looks like Artie Frusciante might be standing in front of a green screen.
Fisk and Buck mention Gino's, which along with Pat's are big rival cheesesteak joints in South Philly, but he says this cheesesteak is from D'Angelo's and King of Prussia, and lifts the rapper to show its name and a photo of Gallo's son eating there. Fisk says Gallo tried to keep his son a secret, suggesting that this kid he had with a mistress that his wife, who we saw at the funeral, didn't know anything about. So Fisk is threatening to ruin his marriage, a public scandal, and we think a threat to eat his son on a hoagie bun.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat your son.
He's like, no, I'm gonna eat your child.
I'm still hungry.
You thought I was gonna do a scandal? No, I'm gonna eat that kid.
Matt said I've been slimming down so I can afford to cheat day.
I can cheat today.
In private quarters, Matt makes a case to Judge Cooper that Hector's vigilante status and mystical amulet would be prejudicial to the jury if it were admitted into evidence, and the judge grants his motion. And we see how Cooper denying bail at the arraignment before was mostly just due to the pressure of the cops filling the room with their Drakkar Noir musk.
Matt meets with Cherry while fiddling with the broken off horn since he's toying with the idea of returning as Daredevil. We scan the sky skyline of Manhattan for glimpses of Avengers Tower, or even the new reconstruction of the building into Sentry's Watchtower, which we've seen in the Thunderbolts trailer, but we struggle to see it in any of the shots. The tower to the immediate right of Matt's head in the shot is actually one Vanderbilt, and is not far from the MetLife building, which is the building in Manhattan where the Avengers Towers was designed to be on top of. So the team on the show apparently did not ever put Avengers Tower or the Watchtower in this background.
There's still time. Just do an update to Disney Plus, please.
Oh, that is true. They could just update this for Disney Plus. They absolutely could.
Yeah, they did that with the Statue of Liberty and Miss Marvel. They changed it to
They easily
copper
could.
color.
They might. Honestly,
They should.
They should.
Matt stands outside of his church, hearing the part of the Catholic Mass that comes right before communion. Lord, I'm not worthy that you should enter under my roof, but only say the word and my soul shall be healed. In Roman Catholicism, you're not really supposed to take communion if you've done something really bad or just drifted away from the church until you've taken confession. So maybe since Matt lost his confidant priest, Father Lantum, since Lantum was killed by Dex in season 3, Matt might just feel he can't really properly confess and go through that version of the sacrament and have someone that he feels comfortable telling about what he's doing, and therefore he cannot take communion. And that could be why we don't see Matt going to church, even though he remains a devout Catholic.
Since Matt cannot admit that he knows there was a witness, the runaway guy that Powell and Shanahan were beating up purely from a legal investigation, he must descend into his Daredevil stocking to prove it, and he follows Powell to his home and stakes out the place.
Heather calls to say that she will not make their date. She has a new client, Mayor Fisk, and his Queenpin, Vanessa. This scene features Zur as Vanessa, and we know that she was only on set for the reshoots. I think it's possible that they might have used the blocking of the physical distance between her and her husband to try to get away with shooting her on a different day compared to D'Onofrio, because the blocking of the scene is just kind of weird. It's so separated. Well, the way they enter the room is a little weird. Like, we never see Zur and D'Onofrio in the same shot. Like, when they walk in, it's just the back of his head, and it could be another actress who's just a stand-in wearing a wig in this moment. Or maybe I'm just overreacting to this being an office set that was clearly constructed on a brightly lit soundstage.
Vanessa says Fisk disappeared from their lives, and Fisk says after he was assaulted by the vigilante, the recovery process was quite involved. And we have a lot of questions as to how involved Fisk's eye hole reconstruction was and everything that implant allows him to do.
Matt overhears Powell and another cop having found the witness from the subway, Nikki Torres, and plan to kill that guy. So Matt gets there first, sends Nikki to try and park so that Cherry can pick him up, and then Powell and his buddy arrive. Powell has on his wrist this tattoo that looks like the Punisher iconography, but it has what looks like lines representing an American flag on the skull. We know that Jeremy Earl is joining this cast as Cole North, an anti-vigilante NYPD detective from Chip Zdarsky's run of the comics, who on this show runs an anti-vigilante task force of the cops who idolize the Punisher. So we assume Powell might be part of this group as well, and maybe he and Shanahan initially entrapped Hector Ayala, knowing that he was the White Tiger. We'll see.
Matt tells the cops he's visually impaired, and then they beat the crap out of him. Since they don't yet know that this is the lawyer with enhanced, vigilante skills, this is totally an ableist hate crime. It is... I said, Stop right there. Drops of Matt's blood splash on the floor, and we hear a choir version of the original theme melody, recalling the oozing red opening title imagery of the original run, and the devil is back.
Yeah, he is. The other guy raises a gun to freaking execute a high-profile attorney. That's how extreme these guys are. And Matt goes to work. He shoves the arm with the gun, he twists the guy around, and then he snaps that arm, releasing the most excruciating bone snap sound effect I think I've heard on Disney+. Powell charges Matt from behind, but Matt sends him flying into the fridge, smearing blood on it, and we cut back to Matt's face during this. His eyes are wide with rage, looking like Dex's eyes in the prologue sequence when we caught him halfway up the stairs. He throws Powell on the floor, and we hear a sickening crunch that suggests something was broken in that skull when he hit the floor.
So... Matt just killed those guys? Matt immediately was like, Daredevil's gone.
Yeah.
But then it's Matt. It is, to be fair, he wasn't Daredevil. He wasn't in the outfit. He was Matt Murdock killing people, so it's a different guy. It's a different dude.
It's worse.
No, it's fine. Also, I'm not trying to be this person. They hit him first.
They did. They were gonna do it. Yeah.
And they were gonna kill him. So it's like he had to kill them first.
I don't know. He's justified. Sorta.
Yeah, sorta. The injuries they suffered were certainly concussive enough to be fatal, but we're not sure if we're meant to interpret this moment as Matt crossing his ethical line of never killing anyone, or Matt just mad that he's being back to Daredeviling.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know if they're dead or not.
That fridge begs to differ.
The fridge is like, what did I do?
The fridge is like, oh God, clean this up.
I'm an accessory to the fact. Matt puts on the glasses that Powell snatched off before, and we see one of the lenses is busted, showing how Matt can no longer hide behind his mask of being a blind lawyer, just like the broken off horn from his Daredevil mask. This mask is also marred, so Matt's scream is really the anger he feels at not really being able to honor what he felt was Foggy's dying wish. I'm also reminded of Ralphie Parker's glasses in A Christmas Story, how when those glasses get dislodged, it's really really a trigger for this kid to release the devil. And of course, we all know young Peter Billingsley grew up to be former Foggy's longtime collaborator, and in the MCU, William Ginter Riva, part of Team Mysterio, that required Matt Murdock's legal expertise for Peter Parker, and of course, a Stark scientist who knows what real rage looks like.
Tony Stark was able to build this in a cave with a box of scraps.
So what do you think, viewer? Was that moment angrier than Matt's snapping at the end of this episode? I don't know.
Honestly, I would say Obadiah Stane was worse.
Yeah, he was pretty pissed.
He was pretty pissed, and he wasn't justified in his anger.
So comment down below with your thoughts on these first 2 episodes, and a reminder that you can continue the conversation with us every week on the Break Room channel, every Wednesday morning for our Daredevil After Show live stream. Follow us on our socials, subscribe to all the channels in the Rockstars network for breakdowns and news coverage of everything you love. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.